In my time as a YouTuber, I've seen many lament the possibility of a dense Australia. Why don't we just cut immigration instead? Well, to keep it short, for an aging country like Australia, if we cut immigration, we can pretty much say goodbye to our economy and workforce. Instead of focusing so much on the downsides of dense living, we should wake ourselves up to the downsides of suburban living. The Australian dream is the belief that the pinnacle of life is buying a house. But the pursuit of owning a home is quickly becoming impossible for young people like me. It's more like the Australian nightmare. The housing crisis in Australia has spiraled out of control. The portion of median income required to service a new loan is a shocking 44.7%, with the average dwelling costing 7.3 times the average income. On average, it now takes a staggering 9.7 years for Australians to save up for the average 20% deposit on a home. How exactly did we end up in this mess? Everyone has a different answer. Tax concessions that unfairly favour homeowners and property investors, high immigration, and not enough supply. When you compare Singapore's skyline to that of Australian cities, you begin to realise that Australian cities don't really have that much in the way of density. A whopping 71% of Australian dwellings are detached houses, compared with only 13% townhouses and 16% apartments. This stands in stark contrast to Singapore, where 78% of residents live in apartments, 17% in condos, and only 5% in private homes. What gets built where comes down to zoning. Thanks to zoning, a substantial amount of land in Australia can only have detached homes built. And that includes Cheltenham, a suburb located just 20 minutes from Sydney CBD. This is the type of place that people want to live. And as a result, you have thousands of people competing for hundreds of homes. It's no wonder then that house prices go up. Cheltenham's median house price is $2.5 million, which is far higher than most of us will ever hope to afford. So why do we allow detached homes across most of our cities? Well, when we go to cities like Singapore, Hong Kong and Seoul, many Australians see cities with little space, people cramped into tiny shoeboxes. That's not living, that's hell. For decades, Australians enjoy living in large houses in leafy suburbs, with a backyard, and perhaps a pool as well. That's the Australian dream. While other countries have to compete for space, we have the luxury of spreading ourselves out as much as possible. Want a spare bedroom? You got it. A backyard? Have a front yard too. We're so used to this that the thought of anything less is suffocating. After all, if there's anything that Australia has enough of, it's space. The problem is that we don't really have an endless supply of land. Such a presumption assumes that all land is created equal. What if I told you this 56 metre squared apartment in Brunswick was equal to this 56 hectare patch of land in Blinman? Given that our 5 biggest cities account for over 60% of our population, and that most Aussies would prefer to stay in the cities they grew up in, by many respects, we're actually running out of land. It's no wonder then that all over Australia, we're being told that the solution to our housing woes is simple. We need to build up, 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 up. The answers lie in cities all over the world, all over Europe and Asia. They even lie in existing parts of our cities. Think Surrey Hills, Collingwood, Tenerife, Subiaco. Yet, many of us are scared to do this. Now, while not all apartments are bad, I simply have to acknowledge that some are. We've all heard stories about poorly built apartment towers, the worst of which have been declared completely unlivable. Strata management can be hit and miss, and I come from a family of 6. There aren't many apartments in Sydney that have enough bedrooms to fit us all. In fact, honestly, I'd be surprised if there were any. But here's the thing. None of these are truly innate to apartment living. They're all obstacles that Australia, its government, and the development industry has slowly set up for itself over time. Our construction industry needs to do better, strata laws need to be far more flexible, and we need apartments with more bedrooms. There's no need to completely write off apartment living. It can be sensational if we do everything right. So let's celebrate apartments. This is the Australian dream for Jeffrey Chu. He is raising his whole family of 4 in an apartment. He's only a short walk to the shops, which means they can get groceries without the need for a car. They're close to public transport, so getting to other parts of the city is easy. The kids' school is just a 10-minute walk away. Cleaning an apartment is easy. There's less to clean up and no lawns to mow. So Jeff, you're raising a family in an apartment here in Pyrmont. What are the benefits? What have you enjoyed about doing that?
I actually grew up in the Hills District, so I grew up in a big house, big backyard, but the convenience of living in the city is really what brought us here.
As a YouTuber, I get a lot of comments on my videos like, you can't raise a family if you don't have a backyard. So as someone who is raising a family in an apartment, and what is it like without a backyard?
I think if you have your own backyard, you're more likely to stay inside your own backyard. Whereas when you're in an apartment, you're forced to go out a little bit more, and it's just a really good lifestyle. You have to remember, with apartment living, the whole point around density is you get a lot of conveniences which come with that.
What have been some of the downsides of apartment living?
You are trading convenience for space, and I think it is worth it. I mean, I first chose apartment living more for affordability.
Have you ever considered moving into a house, or do you think you'll stay in an apartment?
I mean, I'd consider it, but just given we both live and work, in the city, after raising a family in an apartment in the city, it's really changed my perspective. I just can't see us making that trade-off anytime soon.
Imagine a world of having shops and services open 24/7, streets lined with countless dining, entertainment and shopping options, where you feel safe at any hour of the day. In many bustling cities, many are scared to walk home at night in a dimly lit suburbia, for they're likely the only one doing so. Where those living in denser communities worldwide are just a short commute to work, those in Australian suburbia must endure long, suffocating commutes to work, often spending hours each week in a car that's definitely not working to save the environment. And it's expensive. I made a whole other video about that you can watch here. If we could just build bigger apartments with more bedrooms, that would be a brilliant start. That would make it genuinely feasible for families to live in apartments. Where are the 3, 4, or even 5-bedroom apartments? Nothing is stopping us, other than the dated presumption that apartments cannot be lived in by families. Of course, we can't stop there. Poor build quality is a big issue, but governments are working on this. The New South Wales Building Commission, for example, is inspecting thousands of apartments and issuing warnings with the hope of deterring developments from shoddy workmanship in the future. Governments are also working on strata reform in the hopes of making strata properties better for those living there. Look, Rome wasn't built in a day. These reforms aren't everything, but we have to start somewhere. We don't need to fear a denser future. It may be unknown to many of us, but it's known to so many brilliant cities all over the world. In my opinion, the solution to the housing crisis lies in building far more than we ever have. And that's not something that we have to be afraid of. To stop the housing crisis from tearing us all apart, let's all get a little bit closer.